So if you also made the absurd decision to spend 500 pages in this voyeuristic maniac's head and read Midnight Sun, which is Twilight, the first book, from the perspective of Old Man Glitterbag, you would know that being the insufferable self-indulgent egg that he is, he frequently references his own self-imposed metaphor about Hades and Persephone and wonders if he is Hades, dooming Persephone to the underworld. Like, the first time we hear about this in true Edward fashion is when Bella is simply eating lunch, and he says, "Suddenly, as she ate, a strange comparison entered my head. For just a second, I saw Persephone, pomegranate in hand, dooming herself to the underworld. Is that who I was? Hades himself, coveting springtime, stealing it, condemning it to endless night? I tried unsuccessfully to shake the impression." And this, of course, is why we have the dripping pomegranate as the cover art for Midnight Sun, because as the myth goes, the pomegranate is the tool Hades uses to trick Persephone into staying in the underworld with him by eating the pomegranate seeds. Now, I will say something like this is to be expected of a Twilight installment. Each Twilight novel has a very unsubtle classic lit reference that Bella references over and over again. She went Greek mythology for this one, and I will say, I don't hate this reference or comparison. I actually find it pretty interesting, but the way Edward projects it himself is so interesting and indicative of who he is at his core, and it does not reflect well on his self-loathing or self-deprecation. It makes him look worse, because obviously there's many different variations of this myth, and people do love to romanticize it for a few different reasons. At its core, the tale of Hades and Persephone is not any kind of romantic story. Essentially, what happens is Hades, the god of the underworld or death, kidnaps beautiful, innocent, springtime Persephone and rips her away from everything she loves, her family, her mother, particularly the sun. And although she grows to have some affection for her brooding captor because he was really just lonely down there in the world of the dead, he tricks her into staying there with the pomegranate seeds. She didn't have a choice. Persephone eats the seeds from the pomegranate he offered, and she's condemned to stay there. So he tricks her into being his lover and staying with him in the world of the dead with forbidden fruit, if you will. Of course, Persephone gets to leave and live amongst the living for part of the year because we need to have seasons, but that's less relevant to Dusty's little metaphor. Now, I do certainly think there are relevant parallels there. He is dooming Persephone to the world of the dead. He holds the power. He always does. It's entirely on him. And as I always point out and say, Edward very descriptively represents death throughout the books. And of course, Jacob represents life. But the thing is, Dusty's little mythology comparison is one of many demonstrations that Edward is aware that his presence is irresistible, that he is enchanting, and Bella never really had a shot once he started to pursue her. He knows that no human man can compete with him, that everything about him invites her in, especially when we hear things like this. This was a dangerous path to even hint at. Hades and his pomegranate. How many toxic seeds had I already infected her with? Enough that Alice had seen her pale and grieving in my absence. He has visual proof of what she's going to be like if he abandons her, even at this point. There are no examples of humans doing anything other than worshipping these vampires once they are pursued by them. And on some level, Edward is for sure aware of that. At the very least, he knows very well that he's dropping pomegranate seeds, and he knows the more he drops, the longer he stays, the more he does, the worse this will be. And he proceeds to do everything he does anyway, and this is really what makes his premeditated abandonment stunt that he pulls in New Moon all that much worse. Because shortly after he decides in the meadow that he's not going to unalive Bella, because he debated that for quite a while and forced proximity with her anyway, not out of any affection for her, but just to prove that he's not a monster and he can do it, and so as not to upset Carlisle or Esme. But then, fortunately for her, he realizes he can't read her mind and therefore can project his ideal, good, pure, innocent woman onto her, and decides, I'm going to pursue her romantically, actually, because now I'm in love with her. But shortly after that, when Bella is in the hospital, he makes a pretty permanent and resolute decision that he is going to leave her for her own good. He can't really doom Persephone, even though he's already dropped all these pomegranate seeds. He's going to leave her. So instead of just doing that, he carries on this charade with her for months, until her birthday party, where Jasper the Confederate gets rowdy and attacks her, and then he proceeds to destroy her self-esteem, abandon her without a trace, in the most cruel way possible. And this is sort of just Dust Clown in a nutshell, knowing exactly what he's doing and being cruel and destructive in the name of self-righteous convictions he never actually even planned on sticking to. Like, he does all that knowingly, all the while leaving her completely unprotected after bringing all this supernatural drama into her life, proving again it's not really about her safety, but about proving himself. It was to protect you and so as not to doom you, meanwhile leaves her unprotected, was wiring her money the whole time, and comes back and says, oh, it was only a matter of time before I came back. And this is why Midnight Sun, in addition to confirming that the Cullens really do not care about humans at all, really demonstrates the irony of Edward's self-loathing, because it does not make him more sympathetic. Or good, because first of all, he sort of hates himself for all the wrong reasons, and as we have known for quite some time, is actually incredibly self-righteous. And although he's brooding and has some degree of self-awareness, it never actually affects his actions in any sort of redeeming way. It makes it worse because it shows us he knows exactly what he's doing and proceeds to do it anyway, with no excuses, like a 100-year-old, all-powerful billionaire with supernatural abilities and unlimited resources choosing to terrorize a small community when he shouldn't have been there in the first place, and creeping on and dooming teenagers just because he feels like it? Because he got a whiff of spicy blood and wanted to prove something. Like, all his self-loathing, self-indulgent monologues don't make him any better. It makes him worse. And it just makes him highly annoying in addition to it all. It's like he is truly a monster, and he's also that annoying. But I will say, what I do appreciate about the pomegranate cover is, if you view Twilight as the Gothic horror that I believe it is, I think it corresponds quite well with the apple cover. Because the significance of this cover is largely about forbidden fruit, right? And there's many different ways you could interpret this, forbidden love, but I would say I think it aligns best with this kind of apple, the one bite and all your dreams come true. Bella is the one being presented with the apple. This is forbidden fruit, but it's a trick. One bite and you'll be doomed. And the pomegranate really reiterates this, because here Edward is very explicitly and knowingly doling out the forbidden fruit, but this fruit is also a trick or a trap.